What is up, everybody? Hope you are well on this beautiful Wednesday. You know what matters? Your life, my life, economy, things that we care about on a daily basis. Those things matter. You know what doesn't matter? A lot of the noise that you get from DC. And there's a lot of noise right now when it comes to Signalgate. Signalgate. Now, if you don't know what it is, you've been living under a rock. I'll just give you a snapshot. It's a clown show. It is a F-up. It is not giving America's secrets away. It is not something where you look and go, they did that on purpose. They did. They wanted the world to know. But it's definitely an F-up. And you stand up and you say, you know what? I jacked the pooch on this. You added a guy who can't stand MAGA, Republicans, conservatism, and Jeffrey Goldberg of The Atlantic to a thread with, outside of the president, everybody else talking about a action against the Houthis, Yemen. And everybody's, the left, you've got nothing going on. You're like, well, we better do this. This is a great opportunity because it shows that they're giant screw-ups, right? That they jacked the pooch. These guys are full of shit. They got their heads in their asses. This is a perfect example. Pete Hegseth, he's been drinking and it's perfect. Because you don't really have anything else going right now. We talked about it last night. A vast majority of Americans, comparatively to what it's been in the past, it's still not great, but think that the country's on the right track. And it's up 20 points comparatively to where it was when Biden was in office. So everybody's calling for it. We got to get rid of this guy. And this guy has to get fired. Nobody's going to get fired for this. Nobody is. Outside of somebody doing this on purpose, nobody's going to get fired. You screwed up. Now, if there was major secrets on here, yeah, you'd be in trouble. But there wasn't. It was the Houthis. I'm going to tell you this right now. They couldn't stop us if we told them we're coming at this time, right? Houthi and the blowfish would be tougher to maneuver around than the Houthis. We didn't maneuver anybody there. We had people in the region. I think the worst thing of all of this is how Europe got to see behind closed doors what J.D. Vance in particular thinks of Europe. That's for sure. But if you're the left, you've got nothing else. You got to scream. You got to yell. You got to talk about how horrible this is. And everybody needs to get fired. And you got to compare it to, of course, the stuff that the right decried about and said over and over and over again about Hillary and things of that nature.
I think there is a little richness of what you said in the fact that if you go back, way back in the old days as well, and oh my gosh, Hillary Clinton was using the wrong email, or Joe Biden's incompetent. Come on, guys. If you don't think this is a case of incompetence and a pattern after a variety of other kind of sloppy use of classified information, then you've not been following the last 60 plus days that I've been following.
Okay, well, if you're going to go based on the things that you just said, Hillary didn't get punished. And by the way, the difference between Hillary and this, and everybody's trying to equate the same. You were warned about emails and where you should store them and keep them, and you ignored those. You then destroyed that property after being told you shouldn't be using any of this stuff. And you told everybody, it's no big deal, right? There were Groupons and there was some stuff for my daughter's wedding. So it's not quite the same thing as a text chain. And I'll say this, they look like clowns. Pete Hegseth and Walls and all them, you look like clowns. You did. You did. And if somebody did something on purpose and added Goldberg to it on purpose to expose and to do, well, that's a different story. But to say there are war plans for what? We're not invading Yemen. We're not invading Yemen. There's no war plans. But to say that, well, it's just competent. He was, a mess and he was incompetent and things that were completely, they were a mess, and Joe was a mess. Lloyd Austin disappeared for 10 days. Nobody said anything. 13 people died. 13 people died when it came to what took place in Afghanistan. Nobody was really held accountable. So before we go out and we say all of these things about how horrific everything was and how bad everything is and what took place and all of that, let's be honest about what we're dealing with here at this moment in time for just a second. Honesty is a good thing. It was a giant screw up, and I absolutely believe that it was no more than an oops. And if there was some serious stuff, then yeah, should have canned some people's ass. But there wasn't, and we move on. Then you get to the other side of it, which is, doesn't matter. If you are an individual who is worried about your job, worried about paying your bills, worried about living a life where you're not having to work 3 jobs to cover everything, do you care about this?
There is this playbook of blame the journalists or try to diminish them or accuse them of having done something wrong here. But I think, there's also the political component to this, which is how much do most Americans care? And I just happened to be listening to a voter focus group last night that wasn't about this. And voters are thinking about the economy. Voters are thinking about their jobs. I don't think at this moment that most American voters are like, what's going on signal chains? And so what you're going to have, and the challenge for not just Democrats, but the challenge for people who are concerned about the national security apparatus, people who are inside intelligence agencies and are still in the government, people who want to protect the government from other countries or potential adversaries seeing stuff. The challenge is going to be, how do you apply pressure on this administration to change if the public barometer is what is going to decide how they proceed?
I want you guys to say.
Absolutely true. Do you care about this if you're trying to pay for your bills? Do you care about this if you are trying to feed your family? Is this a big deal? It's not. It's a fuck, but it's not a big deal. It's a giant Jack the Pooch, but it's not a big deal. It's that's it. And it's embarrassing, but it's not a big deal in the overall scheme of things and how it affects your life. Like so many of these things, we talk about this crap all day, and I do it in my show and stuff. And so much of it is, it's theatrics, right? The Jasmine Crockett's and the Marjorie Taylor Greens, they're all looking for something. It's theatric, gotcha moments. How many people are following me? How many clicks? How many likes? What's my Q score like? Do people really like to hang out, and watch this or to watch what I say on the floor? But it's more gotcha moments than it is, helping you when it comes to clearing the way so the economy's strong and you can earn a living. And we got plenty of those. I mean, today the DOGE was at it again, and they brought NPR and the PBS. They brought him up there. Why we have them anymore at this point in time? Back in the 60s, they thought, you know what? These TV stations, they're supposed to be good for everybody, and they're supposed to be able to bring, things of value to people. Now all they care about is entertainment and making money, so we should do something else. So we'll create this NPR and PBS thing and outroll these things. Well, lo and behold, you flash forward all these years, and they're completely left-leaning. NPR far, far outweighs the left-leaning side of things compared to PBS. But both of them are left-leaning. And when you hear Jim Jordan talk to, I think her name's Catherine Mayer, who's now the new CEO of NPR, and it's like a 2-minute segment. They go back and forth about everything. And when you understand that, according to Open Secrets, 90% of giving goes from individuals at NPR and PBS goes to Democrats. When you hear, remember Mr. Berliner last year, 25 years or so, he worked for NPR. He came out and basically said, look, he's a liberal, rabid liberal. But he said, this is not news. This is MSNBC dressed up with whisper talk and, Antiques Roadshow. And why are we funding that at all? I'm curious. We shouldn't be funding it. It's time for them to go on their own. And some of these smaller markets, the rural areas, yeah, there's going to be some issues. There's no doubt about that. But we can have workarounds in that situation. But when you listen to when they try to pretend like, well, I'm not quite sure if we're really that biased. I'm sorry. This feels a little biased here when you talk about how many people are on the left inside the editorial room, i.e. Democrats, and how many are on the right.
Congressman, I have never seen any instance of political bias determining editorial decisions. No.
Well, Mr. Berliner.
Which, by the way, when you hear everybody laughing there, even some people on the left are like, "Oh, that's pretty funny." Where's NPR bias? Is NPR bias really?
A couple last year wrote, "I've in the D.C. area editorial positions at NPR." He said he found 87 registered Democrats, 0 Republicans. Is that accurate?
We do not track the numbers or the voter registration, but I find that concerning.
Award-winning journalist who worked 25 years at NPR, Mr. Berliner, was he lying when he wrote that?
I am not presuming such. I just we don't track that information about our journalists.
87 to 0, and you're not biased?
I think that is concerning if those numbers are accurate.
It's concerning. I mean, it wasn't 44-43. It wasn't 60-27. It wasn't 70-17. It wasn't even 80-7. It was 87 Democrats, 0 Republicans, and you say NPR is not biased. How about the big stories over the last few years? According to Mr. Berliner, again, he wrote on the Trump-Russia story, he wrote, at NPR, we hitched our wagon to Trump's most visible antagonist, Representative Adam Schiff. He said they interviewed him 25 times. Is that accurate?
I was not there at the time, but those numbers sound accurate. Yeah.
Those sound accurate. But then he said when the Mueller report came out and Robert Mueller said he found no evidence of collusion, he said Russiagate faded from our programming. Is that accurate?
Again, I was not there at the time. I couldn't say.
You couldn't say?
I was not at NPR at the time.
You didn't prepare for that? You knew we were going to ask you about this guy, didn't you? It's come up like 6,000 times already in the hearing.
I just couldn't say whether it faded from our coverage, sir.
How about this story? October 2020, the New York Post had the Hunter Biden laptop story, and one of those editors, I guess one of those 87 Democrat editors, said this: we don't want to waste our time on stories that are not really stories. We don't want to waste the listeners' and readers' times on stories that are just pure distractions. Was that a pure distraction story?
Our current editorial leadership believes that was a mistake, as do I.
Yeah, the whole country knows that was a mistake.
You can't have 87 people represented in one area of politics, the Democratic side, and have 0 on the other side and not think that there's going to be some sort of bleed into political bias. You just can't. I don't know why. I mean, the amount of funding they get is minuscule comparatively to what it costs to operate. And I don't think that Trump said yesterday, well, we'll find out what DOGE, we know what DOGE thinks. They're going to say, get rid of it. Then there's going to be lawsuits. Then it won't happen for a while because it's going to be back and forth in front of judges. But can we at least be honest? Right? You can bullshit everybody else you want. Can we just be honest with ourselves? You can't have 87 people. If there was 87, I mean, the other day was it Jasmine Crockett or somebody's like, this is the whitest cabinet ever. Well, why? Well, because it's just a bunch of white people. So that's what you think. Yeah. Well, I could look over there and say, you're telling me today, as you're out there defending it, that they're not biased. Yet there's 87 people who represent one side of the political aisle and 0 that represent the other side. Come on. Let's be honest for a second. Okay? Just on this. And PBS is, I mean, as a kid growing up, you watch, the Sesame Street or whatever the hell they had on. They always had, weird stuff like it's Antiques Roadshow. And coming up next on PBS, and where I lived, it was like, we're going to have a big weekend where we ask you for money and you're going to get a tote bag. And it was upstairs, downstairs and stuff like that. And it was that kind of stuff. It's changed. It has. Case in point,
get your
this.
teen voices ready. And we're going to start with our hips. The hips on the drag queen go swish, swish, swish. Swish, swish, swish. The shoulders on the drag queen go shimmy, shimmy, shimmy. Shimmy, shimmy, shimmy. Shimmy, shimmy, shimmy. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. The mouth on the drag queen goes blah, blah, blah. All through the town.
And like that, the Little Mermaid was dead. What the hell was that? Sorry, kids should be singing that. You know, I mean, it's... Could you imagine it? Coming up next on Chad's PBS show, Titties and Toddlers. That's right. We're going to teach these little boys how to read. We're going to do it with Sierra and Crystal. Just insanity. It is. Some fun stuff today. No doubt about that. But I go back to this. What matters? Your life, my life, family, economy, things like that. A lot of this other stuff is noise. Because we have turned politics into, well, kabuki theater, if you will, into insanity at times. And we've turned it into a soap opera. And we've turned it into entertainment. And that's a shame because it should be something. I always wanted my politicians to be like referees in sports. If you don't know their name, there's a very good chance they're having a good game. But if you go, this person reffing the game, there's a good chance that there's going to be some drama, if you will. No doubt about that. Solid fun, as always. We'll do it again tomorrow a little bit earlier. I had a bunch of stuff to do today and a bunch of other interviews that I still have to get to tonight. Follow along across all my social media. If you're looking there, like and subscribe or follow along. We appreciate when you do that. You guys have a blessed rest of your night, and we will do it again tomorrow. And be good to each other, even if it's for just a moment.